Breaking news, and the Transport Secretary has just announced changes to England's international travel rules. From Monday the 4th of October, the current traffic light system will be replaced by a two-tier system, that is a red list of countries and the rest of the world. Fully vaccinated travellers from non-red list countries will be able to replace day 2 PCR tests with cheaper lateral flow tests from the end of October. They will also no longer need to take pre-departure tests. From next Wednesday, the 22nd of September, 8 more destinations will be removed from the red list, and they include Turkey and Pakistan. Our correspondent Nick Martin joins me now from Westminster. Hello to you, Nick. So these long-awaited changes announced by Grant Shapps, what do they mean?
It means that travel is going to be a lot easier. And if you're watching this and you're planning a holiday and you've been trying to negotiate the system throughout the summer with tests and when to do tests and how much tests cost, the good news is this is a far simpler and straightforward system. It's fair to say that the government have relaxed an awful lot of rules, and it all hinges on whether you're vaccinated or whether you're unvaccinated. The headlines really are that this is a simplified system. Out goes the traffic lights, the red, amber and green. We've now got red, a red list countries and the rest of the world. The testing requirements have been significantly reduced. As you said, from Monday, October the 4th, 4 a.m, fully vaccinated people returning from non-red list countries, that'll now be replaced with a day 2 days after you arrive, and 8 days, a lateral flow test, much cheaper, much quicker than the PCR tests. And that's really quite significant. That has been a lot of the additional costs that people have had to bear this summer as they wanted to go on holiday. The cost of those pre-departure tests and those tests at day 2 and day 8, they've been pretty expensive. The government says now that if you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated under a recognised vaccination scheme, those tests can now be replaced by a lateral flow test, and that, says the government, they want that to be introduced by the end of October. That's in time for people returning back from the half term, so that's really quite significant. As I say, testing requirements have been reduced. The government wants to introduce this by the end of October. If you have a positive test, you still, the government says, have to isolate. But there's another critical change here, because previously you've had to pay for PCR tests. These, for the vaccinated, will now be available on the NHS, and that's a really quite significant step forward. So if you're coming back from holiday from a non-red list country, you don't have to pay for an expensive test. You can take one of those lateral flow tests. Now, the red list countries, there's been a long list of countries taken off the red list: Turkey, Pakistan, the Maldives, Egypt, Oman, Bangladesh, Kenya. That's effective from September the 22nd. And there's a little warning for those who are perhaps still not vaccinated. The unvaccinated will still have to take day 2 and day 8 PCR tests, and it's not clear, and we'll try and clear this up, it might be getting cleared up soon, whether those PCR tests will still have to be privately funded, therefore still quite expensive, or whether they will be available on the NHS, as they have become now available for those who are vaccinated returning from non-red list countries. This is effectively a massively reduced, less complicated system. And underlying all of this is a drive to get us moving again, not just families, but businesses and that global interconnections. Travel for the last 18 months has been in sometimes nigh on impossible. The last few months very expensive and quite complicated, although people have been travelling. This is designed quite clearly to get people on the move again. It is an economic boost to the travel industry, and it'll mean that people are able to book their holidays and not have to worry about whether that country might be moved from red to amber. People still returning back from a red list country will still have to do that managed isolation in hospitals and things like that. But for the vast majority of people coming back from non-red list countries, it will be far simpler, Sarah.
Nick, we have heard from the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, in the last few moments. Let's have a listen to what he has to say.
We wanted to bring a new, simpler, easier to navigate and cheaper system as well. And so we brought this in to the new year at the very least. And the purpose is to make it easier for people to travel without the bureaucracy, without so many tests, and with a greater level of certainty now that we've got so many people vaccinated.
Nick, just looking through the government's notes on this, what is clear is if you're fully vaccinated, the aim is to make it much easier. If you're unvaccinated, it's actually going to get tougher if you were coming back from what would have been a green list country, for example, because now the baseline travel requirement for somebody who is unvaccinated is home quarantine for 10 days.
Yeah, that's right. Home quarantine for 10 days, test release on day 5, day 2 and day 8 test. It's very obvious what the government are doing here. This is a little nudge to those who are not vaccinated to say that you are not going to be able to travel in the same way that people who have chosen to be vaccinated are. And we've seen this kind of nudge throughout the pandemic, especially since the vaccinations have been available. And this is very clearly saying if you're not vaccinated, then travel will still be quite significantly more complicated and in many cases more expensive. In fact, in probably all cases, expensive. And your time, your restrictions will be still placed upon you. And that could help just to dislodge some of the doubters who are still remaining here, who do not want to get the vaccination, who might see their friends who are double jabbed, going away on holiday, skipping away, knowing that they just have to take lateral flow tests when they get back. Those people who aren't vaccinated will have a far more difficult journey. They're also trying to extend some of reduce some of the restrictions for people who are coming in from countries where we now recognise those vaccinations. So the government are saying they're going to recognise people coming in from a selected amount of countries who've had Moderna, the Johnson & Johnson, the AstraZeneca, and those people who may have had a mix of the two vaccines. They'll still be able to come in under those new relaxed rules. And so a significant stripping away of a lot of the restrictions that travellers have been working under, operating under for so long. And it'll certainly be very welcomed by the travel companies. In fact, you would imagine right now people Googling flights, trying to get back away on holiday, knowing that just a little bit easier, that just a little bit more peace of mind, that they're not going to be hit with a big hotel bill, for example, if the country suddenly moves from an amber to a red. And so travel companies, I would expect, will be quite happy with this. This is what they've been asking for of the government for some time, and it will certainly reduce a lot of the costs that have been involved in going on holiday. Lateral flow tests, which are the instant tests involving a swab and dropping them on a little reader, they only take about half an hour. They're very, very cheap. The PCR tests have sometimes been 80, 120 pounds. And so these have all been removed now, making travel a lot easier. So a significant announcement by Grant Shapps and the government, effectively getting people moving again. And moving is good for people's health. It's good for their families. Holidays are clearly good for people, but it's also going to be good for global travel and the economy in general.